Well, hello friends, and welcome back to this restoration series that we're doing. This is what I believe is a pre-Republic era Peterson that we are restoring for J. Lucas 39, or John. And when we left off at the last video, I had just started the salt treatment, and I let this sit overnight. Well, actually it's about 24 hours now, and you can see just how dark the salt has gotten. So it's done a really good job of pulling the tars and oils out and just cleaning the interior of this. You'll also notice that there's a bit of staining in this area, and that's where the alcohol has kind of wicked up through that crack. And that's fine. We're going to thoroughly sand this anyway. I wanted to show you, I'll pour the salt out, and I'm guessing, I have no idea obviously, but I'm guessing that there's going to be quite a bit of white salt underneath this. So let's see what we get. And just get in there, and well, that's actually really packed in. Huh, was not expecting it to be this hard to... Normally when I do this it just tips straight out. Let me try a different tool. Oh, here it is. So this actually, you can see this is coming out all brown. I was thinking we'd have, oh, there we go, we're getting some clear salt here in the bottom. It's interesting how this process works. It really does draw the stuff out of the briar and through the salt. And very often, if the pipe's not extremely in need of a salt treatment, what you'll find is that you've got that dark brown top, and then once you break that, what's below is actually pure white. This is not the case. And I think the reason for that is that what's happening is all the stuff is being drawn up, and as the alcohol is evaporating, it's being pulled to the top surface. So, boy, this is interesting. I have not experienced this before. It's actually rather glued together, basically. And I'm guessing that's because there was just a lot of tar in here that kind of gummed things up. But that's okay, we'll get it out. I have to do a bit more work with this. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pick away at this to get it out, so I want to do that carefully. I'll do so off camera. And we're waiting for the stainless steel tubing to come in before I start the next step. So I will bring you back once I've got this cleaned out and once I've got the stainless steel tubing. Alright, so I got the salt out, which was not as easy as it normally is. And you can see it's done a really nice job here of cleaning up the tobacco chamber. The mortise is still rather what I'm going to call tarry looking. It just doesn't look as clean as I'd like it to, and that was the part that was the hardest to get out and had the most buildup in it. So I think I'm actually going to repeat the salt treatment. It won't hurt, and we've got time as we're waiting for the stainless steel tubing to arrive. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll do it off camera. You've seen me do it once, and I've got a salt treatment video. If anyone's really interested, I'll put a link to that. But yeah, we're going to give this a second salt treatment just to be safe, just to try to get as much stuff out of the walls of the briar as we can. And after that's done, I'll clean out the salt, and I'll bring you back once I'm ready to start working on installing the stainless steel tubing. Well, we're back, and I've done an additional salt treatment now, so everything is looking pretty good. I'm pretty confident that I've got all the sort of tarry stuff out of the sump down there, and yeah, I like the way this is looking now. I think we're getting close to where we need to be. I also have now the stainless steel tubing. So this is medical grade stainless steel. It's seamless, so there won't be any seams to cause any issues. And it does fit. Let's see if I can show you this. Don't know if I'm going to be able to actually show you this. So let's see if we can get the light snaked around there. Yeah, you can kind of see it. There we go. So it's going right into that hole. So the next thing that we need to do is obviously cut the tubing to size. And I'm going to cut it. If you look down there, you'll notice, let me try to get this as, you'll notice that there's, between the sump and the airway, there is actually a bit of material missing. So basically the bottom of the airway was the top of the sump, and that's slightly eroded. It's only about maybe 1/8 of an inch or so, but it is a piece that's missing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the tubing so that it actually does extend up to the top of that sump and forms the appropriate barrier between the sump and the airway. Otherwise, I'm concerned that it might start gurgling. And this is, by the way, 5/32 internal diameter. So this is the 5/32 reamer that just fit inside the airway before we changed anything. And you can see that it just fits inside the tubing. So we're basically going to be restoring the original airway dimensions. So what I need to do now is cut this to size, and also I need to rough it up a bit because we're going to be using epoxy to hold it in place. The inner wall is fairly rough because I drilled it out by hand, so there's going to be some texture there to grab the epoxy, but the outside of this is very smooth. It's not a huge deal in this case because there's going to be absolutely no pressure applied to this. This is just going to be sitting in there. It's never going to be pulled on or anything. But just a little bit of epoxy to keep it, just a little bit of roughing of the surface to give the epoxy something to grab to is in order. So I will do that, and I will bring you back once we have that in place, and we're going to be ready to start working on the exterior of the stummel. So we have installed the tubing now, and you should be able to see that quite clearly, the stainless steel tube in the back there, and hopefully I'll be able to catch this right. So you can see how it's forming that upper wall of the sump now. But it's pretty much flush with everything other than the sump. So it is really exactly where it needs to be. I took care to really pack the epoxy in above and below just to make sure that we're getting an airtight seal all the way around that tube. But it was a pretty tight fit, so I'm confident that we're in good shape there. And as it should be, it's not sticking out into the tobacco chamber. If you look down there where the draft hole is, you can catch maybe just a little bit of silver, which is at the very end of the tube. But of course that hole is going to be relocated close to the center, so that's exactly where we want the tube to be. And it is epoxied in place and should basically stay there for the rest of the life of this pipe, which hopefully will be many, many more years. Okay, so now the real work begins. So now what we're going to do is we're going to begin working on the exterior of the stummel, and that's just going to be an awful lot of sanding. I'm going to not do anything here around the area where the cap is going to go, because I want to fit the cap and I don't want to sand it down too far and have the cap be loose or anything. So we'll leave that. But basically I'm just going to start with this is 240 grit Abernet, and we're just going to begin sanding and do that the whole pipe. As I mentioned in the overview, we're not really looking to bring this back to sort of showroom shape. John is okay with some nicks and flaws, and we're going to leave some of those. We're going to make it look as good as we can, but the one big example is this sort of chip that's missing right here on the rim. So instead of topping the rim, we're actually going to sand off the top, and then we're just going to sand that smooth as well. So there'll be a little facet in there, and that'll just be, you know, something that helps tell the story of the pipe. So I will sand this at 240 grit, and then 320, 400, 600. A lot of sanding, a lot of boring work. So I'm not going to do that live, but I will bring you back when the sanding is finished. Okay folks, I apologize for that whining sound, but there's nothing I can do about it right now, and I wanted to continue with the video, so hopefully it won't be too annoying to you. So we have the stummel here. I have now sanded this to 400 grit overall, and unfortunately there's a few surprises here. Nothing that's sort of a showstopper, but a little bit of a disappointment. So first off, some of the stains on this are quite deep. You can see this charring. I mean, I sanded quite a bit with the 220 grit and was unable to really do much in terms of removing that. And whatever was going on down in here, you can see is just not yielding to sanding. So this has been sanded 220 grit, 240 grit, all the way up to 400. And I really don't want to sand too deep into the briar here because I don't want to be getting any closer to that airway, which we know we are quite close to. So, you know, John said that he didn't mind there being some nicks and patina on here. There are some nicks as well, which again I'm leaving in place because I just don't want to sand too deeply and change the shape of the pipe. And it does leave some character as well. So, you know, that is what we're left with. Also, you can see I sort of faceted off these places where there were large chips, right here and right here. So that's going to be some interesting character as well to the pipe. The grain on this, as you can see, is not really anything spectacular. So I don't think it's going to be a problem to just sort of do a dark walnut on this, and that'll help conceal a lot of that, but also you know, leave it visible for interest, and you know, for John to be able to tell the story of the pipe. I have filled that crack with epoxy, and that is a smooth surface now, so that's good. One thing that I noticed, so, well, before I get onto that, I have retorted this, and the way I did that was I made this little dummy stem, and I made this for two reasons. One was to be able to do the retort before I made a stem, but also I wanted to play around with this angle and make sure that I could get that you know, a good tight fit, and I can, so I'm happy with that. So I used this to retort, and then after the retort, was looking over the pipe, and well, the first thing is I retorted it to clean it, but also to see if any steam escaped from this area, because that would tell me that we hadn't done a good job of sealing off the hole. There was no steam escaping. It seems to have worked really well. But what I did notice as the alcohol was drying off, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to appreciate this, but down, you can see how that tobacco, the draft hole there is first off on the side of the bowl, and then there's a little bit of what appears to be a little bit of cracking right above it. Well, it turns out that that little bit of cracking is actually part of this crack here. So the crack does run into the airway, but it actually runs through into the tobacco chamber as well. Now, in the process of placing the stainless steel tubing and epoxying that in place, we did seal off that crack, and I have sanded back. There was some epoxy that had come out, and I sanded that back. That is, for the most part, going to be covered with pipe mud anyway. And what I will do is I'll make sure to put a layer of pipe mud up the side here and around the edges, just a light layer to help with cake formation. I do not believe that that is going to be an issue for this pipe. I don't think this is a pipe that John's going to want to smoke every day. I think with light use, you know, once a week, once every other week, something like that, this pipe will last for many, many years without issue. But it is something to be aware of, that crack is a bit more than I had originally thought. So hopefully John will be okay with that. There's really nothing I can do other than push on at this point. Also, hopefully the markings on this are not going to be too bothersome to him. He did say that some patina was acceptable. I was hoping that I could do a better job with that dark spot down there, but that just seems to have been open for so long, and so much smoke and tar and whatnot has passed through that it really has deeply stained the briar. And again, the part of the reason why this crack was such a problem is that draft hole, and you can see where the stainless steel tubing enters here, that draft hole was actually very close to the top of the shank. So any additional sanding here would be unwise. So this is where we're at right now. And the next thing that I'm going to do, so I've done nothing in this area. So you can see the sanding stopped right at that line. But otherwise, this is basically ready to receive a first coat of stain, and we'll see where it goes from there. But before I get on to that, obviously I need to make a stem. I need to fit the cap here, but I think the stem is going to be the first thing to do. So we will need to investigate the stem and see if we can come up with something historically accurate, or at least a plan for something historically accurate, and begin making that. So we are going to make a vulcanite stem. It is going to be an Army mount, and we'll talk a bit about Army mounts or military mounts in the next installment of these videos. And I'll explain a bit about why they're good, what some of the issues are with them, and the importance of the metal end cap on here. So I think what I'm going to do then is draw this video to a close. I know it doesn't seem like we've made a lot of progress here, but actually much of the difficult work is now done. Making the stem is really all that remains to be done in terms of difficulty, and then it's going to be a matter of fitting the end cap, gluing it on, doing the staining, and final polishing. So next installment we will begin working on the stem. So thank you for watching. I appreciate your time. I'd really appreciate it if you would like, comment, or subscribe if you're not a subscriber. And until the next time we speak, I will look forward to talking to you all again very soon. Goodbye now.